It's opening weekend for spring training baseball. We're going to talk Cubs on the breakdown with the professor, so let's get into it. Cubs take on the White Sox rivalry game. Years past, the White Sox and Cubs didn't play during the regular season for the Crosstown Cup like they have the last few seasons, and the only time you would be able to see them was in Las Vegas at something called the Big League Weekend, where the former Las Vegas Area 51s would host Cubs White Sox, and that was always a big ticket. This year, opening day, we have Cubs White Sox. So, what do we see? Well, the roster construction is going to be a little bit, even for spring training, going to be a little bit odd. And here's why. A lot of Major League Baseball players are not naturalized American citizens. And so they're having to go through their annual visa requirements, in particular Venezuela. So the Cubs are without one of their starting catchers to opening for the opening weekend and for spring training, which is going to impact your starting pitching because you're starting to build those batteries and you want to get bring on the pitchers and get them familiarized with the catchers. And so what we're seeing is because the Cubs are short one of their starting catchers, we're looking at a lot of the backups. You're getting Miguel Amaya, who did start quite a few games last season. I've watched him since his time with South Bend, and he went ahead and started this game with Jamison Tyon. And what I'm going to tell you is over the weekend, Cubs did not look good. They went 0 for 3. Counsell, without his full complement of players, without being able to set certain things for the rosters, I think that the entire Cubs coaching staff had to pivot on what they actually wanted to accomplish during this spring training. And because of that, you see a different flavor of what I think you would traditionally see at a spring training. So going on with that, Tyon starts the game, goes 1.2 innings pitched with 4 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. So Tyon not looking too sharp. His starting catcher was a minor leaguer named Brett Bateman. Bateman did go 2 at bats and had one hit, so that wasn't bad. Miguel Amaya did come in as relief, and he ended up having 1 walk and 1 at bat. But those guys handled the catching for the day. The only real highlight to bring you from Cubs White Sox, which we lost 8-1 to the lowly White Sox, was a first at bat home run by Seiya Suzuki. So Suzuki showing early power against the Cubs or the White Sox starter, and that was the total of our offensive capability that day. It was a total rout. Cubs immediately moved into basically just throwing pitchers out there so Counsell could get a look, and the White Sox bats, took absolute advantage of it. So was not a pretty Friday opening spring training game. Most of the time, spring training games are not pretty, but you do like to see, your your probable starters in your rotation, pitch and not give up 4 runs. So that unfortunately did happen. What we see in day 2, Texas versus Cubs. Cubs lose 3-2. It was a little bit better of a game, but a lot of dicey defensive plays. One of the things we did get to see with this game was Matt Shaw starting in right field. This is an interesting move because we know that Shaw stayed on board even with bringing Bregman in, and we're probably going to use Shaw as a super utility player. But this weekend, the Cubs also signed Michael Conforto from the Dodgers. Now, he had started off and played with the Mets and then played with the Dodgers, and they've signed him to a minor league, so we probably see him this week batting in a Cubs uniform. But he's a left-handed batter with some pop, and you'd imagine that he's probably going to be playing probably going to be in the DH spot. So that leaves some questions for Shaw. Shaw's not quite DH, but I also don't see him starting anywhere in the outfield. So again, it looks like Shaw's going to be like a super utility guy just to give dudes a day off. When it comes to Swanson, when it comes to Nico, when it comes to Bregman, and then possibly put him in right field, and then shift the outfielders Hap and Suzuki and Pete Crow Armstrong around. This game did see some more starters actually for the Cubs, which is again kind of unfortunate that we lost. But we had Shaw starting in right field, Pete Crow Armstrong, which took 3 at bats, so he played a good chunk of the game and had 0 hits. Carson Kelly catching, and that was really it when it comes to the position players. Another ugly start by a Cubs probable starter in the rotation. Matthew Boyd goes 1 2/3 innings pitched with 5 hits, 1 earned run, 0 walks, and 4 strikeouts. So a little stronger on the strikeouts, but gave up 5 hits and had a run. After that, it was pure minor league pitching, and unfortunately, the defense soured and the Rangers took advantage of it. Again, another Cubs loss. What did Council want to get out of the game? I think he wanted to see how Shaw would field out in right field, what his defense looked like, and then I think again without some of the starters being present, it looked like just getting some eyes on some of the minor leaguers, which is what you want to do in the early game, the early spring training games before you start putting together, more of a rotation, letting pitchers go 3, 4, 5 innings, letting your starters, play 5, 6, 7, and then full game worth of innings. We're definitely not there yet in the opening weekend, but again, you'd like to see a little bit more consistency from some of those guys who are your starting veterans, and through game 2, just simply not there. Story of game 3 on Sunday: Cubs versus Giants at Giants. Again, we have Shaw starting. One of the minor leaguers that has done some time, cup of coffee with the Cubs in the majors, is James Triantos. He goes 1 at bat with 1 walk and then had an RBI. So we're seeing in this game what was really ugly, and unfortunately the low light is when Council is testing when he gets base runners. He's definitely looking at aggressive base stealing and aggressive running, and so the Cubs give up a triple play in this, which was a really, really ugly play because one of the people caught in that triple play was Matt Shaw, who's projected to be our utility guy, and so just that inability to make good decisions on a line drive ball and then getting picked off is spring training is the time you want to see that, but Shaw's kind of showing some of his immaturity when it comes to decision making on the Bates path. Suzuki started, as well as Miguel Amaya, and we got to see Dylan Carlson for the first time in a Cubs uniform in left field. He ended up having 2 hits and 1 walk, no runs scored. Scott Kingery has been playing shortstop second, and as of right now, the live game that's going, game 4 for the Cubs, he had, I believe, 2 hits and 2 RBIs, so that's not too bad at all. Again, story of the pitching: Colin Ray, one of our probable starters. Ray had, he's been up and down. He had been moved to mid-relief. The Cubs starting rotation took injuries. I think we were down to 3 actual starters at a certain point after the beginning of the season, and Ray came back from mid-relief to become a starter again in his career. And he unfortunately goes 1 2/3 inning with 3 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, and only 2 strikeouts. So not really what you're wanting to see out of, again, another very seasoned veteran, but it is opening weekend, so that's where we sit. Cubs are 0-3. Has Council gotten to what he wanted to get out? I think a little bit of, he's getting to at least see more of the pitching capability and depth for the minor league guys who may, just like last season, may have to come up quite early in the season because of, due to injury. Right now we're very hamstrung with visas not being cleared for some of our foreign players. Today, not starting pitching, but in relief, Javier Assad, who's a Mexican national citizen, was able to pitch. So his visas and everything have been cleared, it looks like, for the season. And, when it comes to our Venezuelan catcher, Moises Ballesteros, that was one of the key pieces coming up from the minor leagues at the end of last year that the Cubs were kind of hanging their hat on to make an impact. When you look at our catching core right now, you look at veteran Carson Kelly, you look at Miguel Amaya, and then Moises Ballesteros. And so those are probably going to be the three. I imagine Ballesteros will probably start again Triple A at the end, when all's said and done with Miguel Amaya, and Kelly taking days on, days off, and dividing up. But one of the things they're looking at Ballesteros for is a possible DH position come up with the pop that he's shown in the Triple A level. The other, it goes kind of unsaid, but this is a World Baseball Classic year too, and so one of the things that coaches and staff for spring training have to work into their plan is that they're going to be losing a lot of their star power players, getting sets and reps as a team for those that were selected to play at the World Baseball Classic. So that's going to affect, for us, Matthew Boyd and Pete Crow Armstrong. So those two are going to be gone. And we're going to have to hope that they're getting reps, with the World Baseball Classic team, depending on how far into the Classic that they go, into the round robin tournament that they play. But that's going to be on and off the rest of the spring, going into March and eventually into opening day. Now, granted, the Cubs aren't the only team that's going to hurt, but so in theory, it's all equal across the board with teams not being able to play some of their starters. But when we look at some of those key positions right now, I'm not ever going to say I don't want a baseball player to go play for Team America, but at the same time, their paycheck is cashed and signed by Chicago Cubs. So I kind of wish that we get those guys as much team time as they can. It sounds like Boyd is not going to get another start for pitching, so we only saw him once, and then the rest of his pitching is going to be during the World Baseball Classic. And Pete Crow Armstrong has played 2 of the 3, and he is playing today, so 3 of the 4 games that have happened so far, which is good. But we're not starting all of our starters, so it's him surrounded with a majority minor league guys. You're not building the communication skills that you need as a center fielder with Happ and a Suzuki out there. So I don't like it. Just like everybody else, I have to suck that egg right now. But hopefully, Team America comes out on top, and hopefully the Cubs players get the sets and reps that they need. Slow start to spring training for the Cubs. Hopefully, we pick up and see some better. It already looks like Council, is definitely not going to try to win the Cactus Spring League trophy, but that's okay by me. But at the end of the day, I want to see a lot of the veterans, showing that they're ready to start the season. And I want to be pleasantly surprised by some of the guys in the minors. And right now, haven't seen anybody that's really standing out. Really, no surprises there, and kind of. I want to say a little disappointed with what it looks like is going on in our rotation with the starters that have started and kind of lackluster performances and 1 2/3 inning and multiple runs given up. And the defense again, errors on the base paths, multiple caught stealings. I know Council's going pretty aggressive just to see what the guy's speed looked like under game-like scenarios, but I got it. The runs don't count, but at the same time, we're making kind of some silly decisions and some situations that I don't think are realistic for the actual season. So that's it for here. We will catch you next time. As always, go Cubs.